hello, this is Praveen. Welcome to .NET for the ASP.NET Core training. Today we are in module 1, like introduction to ASP.NET Core, session 2, like in terms of client-side technologies, HTML and JavaScript basics. Okay, so we are not learning HTML and JavaScript in detail, but you need to have overall view on HTML and JavaScript. Okay, so we will see what are the client-side technologies like in terms of HTML and JavaScript. I'm going to introduce the purpose of HTML and JavaScript. Okay, so what is the limitations in terms of using the client side technologies? Okay, so we will go through the limitations in detail and we'll have a quick recap demos on JavaScript. Okay, and we will also dive into why we need server-side programming like ASP.NET Core Engine. Okay, so and we will see some of the transition to server-side concepts. Okay, so here are the agenda items. Let's get started. So as I told you, like HTML and JavaScript basics, like in terms of HTML. So HTML defines the structure, okay, the layout of how that particular web page, the heading should look like, the paragraph, the images, okay. So it is basically static in nature, no logic and interaction by itself, okay. So this is the limitation, like it just behaves like a static HTML pages, okay. So whereas like in terms of JavaScript, it's a client-side scripting language that adds interactivity, form validations or animations, etc. Okay, so it runs on the browser without covering the contact in the servers. Like we have gone through it in detail with respect to this session 1, right? So by that now you need to understand the HTML and JavaScript runs at the client side, not on the server side. Okay, and the HTML is for display the UI layout, like a basic structure. Okay, whereas like in JavaScript, it's a client-side scripting language. Okay, so why we have some limitations with HTML and JavaScript? Because like the main disadvantages with the JavaScript is like it is like do not have the variables with explicit data types like in C Sharp. Like in C Sharp, like we have integer data types, string data types, floating, double, and all the stuff, right? Like and but like here in JavaScript, like we do not have the data types, like we do not have the explicit data types, like we have to use let or where or constant variables. Okay, let is also like where like the data type of that particular variable is defined at the runtime. Okay, so that's the main disadvantages. So while we using this kind of variables like in let variable and constant data types, okay, so it is very difficult to do certain operations like in concatenating to a string or adding to an integer. Okay, data comparison and everything, that's very difficult. I will show you the demos. Once you go through the demo, you will understand in detail. So for now you understand like JavaScript only supports these three types of data types like let, variable, and constant data types, and it do not have the variable explicit data types like in C Sharp. Okay, it doesn't support the explicit data types like C Sharp or Java. Okay, so let me connect to my tab and explain you that in details of this particular JavaScript variables. Okay, okay, yeah, it got connected. Okay, HTML and JavaScript basics. Okay, JavaScript, as I told you, like JavaScript doesn't have the rich data types. So it is like do not have strong data types. Okay, JavaScript have only three data types to support, like it is supposed let, where, constant. So these are the data types in JavaScript. Okay, you do not have something like integers or string or float, double, etc. Okay, so the basic data types itself, it do not have this flexibility of having the explicit data type declaration. Okay, and when I try to use these particular variables, okay, so in any of the operations like in concatenating a particular string or adding it to numbers in integers and all the stuff, like I have many issues. Like I will let you know, like example, like the first one, let's say I declare a variable let. Okay, num is equal to 10. So this particular let, this is the let is like just like a variable. Okay, so let is like a var variable. Okay, this particular uh, type of this particular number value is decided on the runtime. Okay, so let I will declare some other variable like text is equal to apples something. Okay, so when I try to concatenate this to one of the integer and a string type, like what will be the result? See here, at result is equal to 10 apples. So this is the output actually. Okay, this is the actual output. What should be the actual output of for this particular thing? Can I concatenate a integer and a string type? Like, can I add those integer types and the string types? Like it cannot, right? It should give a compile time error. So actual output should be at a compile time error. But what is the result output here? Result output is 10 apples, which is wrong. So this should be the right thing. Okay, I hope you understand what I'm trying to do. Okay, so let take another example. Let's say let result is equal to true plus 2. Okay, so I'm concatenating a boolean value with a integer value. So what should be the output here? It should be actual output should be like it should be a compile time error, right? So actual output, it should be compile time error. Okay, this is the right output. Okay, so but what we are getting as a result over here, result output, what we are getting here is like the 3. So it is taking true as 1. Okay, it is considering this true as 1, and it is concatenating 2 with 2, and it is giving the result 2. Okay, this is the one of the disadvantages in using this loosely coupled data types in JavaScript. Okay, so it will take another example, like in, let's say let result is equal to, okay, 5 is equal to 5. Let's say I'm just comparing. I wanted to use this in the comparison. Like, let's say I wanted to compare these two integers. Okay, so one is the integer type, another one is a string type, right? So it should, what it should give the actual output should be false, right? So this is the right one. But what is the result output we are getting here in the JavaScript? Like we are getting true. So it is comparing the integer and the string. So it does not have the difference in terms of having this is the integer value or the string value. So that's the difference in terms of having this kind of an issues. Okay, so I hope you understand like what we are doing over here, like in, having the JavaScript limitations. Okay, so I will go through the demo, and I will explain you this examples in detail, and I will show you what's the issues over here. Okay, let me connect to my Visual Studio. So in this, we completed session 1. Let's say we create the session 2 project. Okay, new project. So in this, I don't want it to take ASP.NET Core Web API. So web app. Okay. So we'll take a basic like empty core ASP.NET Core empty application. Like I just wanted to work with an HTML and a JavaScript, right? So simple. I just wanted to take this. Okay. So I'm just creating this one. So I wanted to say this is the session 2. Okay. Session 2, like JavaScript. Sorry, HTML and JavaScript demos. So it doesn't need this one. Okay. So I just wanted to give the name as HTML session 2, HTML and JavaScript. Okay. Like in session 2. So let's say give some basics. Okay. So here is the location for my project. So give the selection and say next. Okay, I'm selecting some of the framework. It doesn't matter really because I'm just working with the HTML. So whatever the framework I select 6 dot or 8 or 9 or .NET framework or doesn't matter. Okay, so I just go through with 9.0. So I wanted to set this as a setup startup project. Okay, if you can see your launch settings, you know what is we are having in the launch settings and the program.cs class file. So when I open the program.cs class file, so here is your web application create builder. Okay, so I'm going to build this particular web application. So since I wanted to work with this HTML files, I wanted to use static files, right? So I will say app dot use default files. Okay, and I will say app use static files. So this is the standard for using default file and starting working configured to the HTML pipeline for HTML files. So this is the and static content. Okay, if you can see here, these are the standard way you wanted to work with the HTML files and static files. So whereas in the previous session, like what we worked with the Razor engine, right? So Razor engine, we have to use the Razor pages, and we have to use the map to the Razor pages, so that it will go and search the .cshtml in this particular pages folder. Okay, if it is HTML, like it is going to search with index.html in the www root. Okay, I hope you understand like what we are trying to do. I'm going to explain you once again. Like in session one, we worked with a simple razor pager, right? So what we have done, we have added the razor page to the container, and we have used mapped that particular razor pages. Okay, when we map that particular razor pages, it will go and search for the index.cshtml in the pages folder. Okay, whereas like in HTML files, like you have to configure saying that this is the default files and this is the static files. So default file, where it will go for HTML, for HTML it will go and search in the www root folder. Okay, so I will create the so forget about the session one. So I'm creating this particular folder for www root. Okay, so now here I wanted to add the index.html. Okay, I added the index.html. Okay, I set this as startup product and red runs. And okay, so let's see whether it goes and reads the index.html from the www root, because we configured with the startup, okay, program.cs class file. So I said like use default files, and I used said use static files, right? So let's run this. So it's already using this one, and it's getting me the HTML is being loaded. Okay, here is our HTML file. Okay, so let's say I wanted to write this in the body. I will have this particular JavaScript defined, and I'll show the limitations in this particular HTML. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, we do that. Okay, so I am declaring the H tag. Okay, so I'm writing some JavaScripts over here. Okay, example one. So I took as I told, like I'm taking the let variable. I'm just taking the integer value and a in a string value. Okay, I will say alert of num test plus text. Okay, I'll take the next example. Okay, so true plus true. Okay, so we have just concatenated a boolean value with an integer. Okay, so now that we do comparisons. Okay, function. So let compare. Okay, I hope you understand like what we have done with this particular three JavaScripts. Okay, functions. Okay, now I will have these three buttons, and I will try to call these functions. Okay, JavaScript function within button click event. Okay, so click. So I'm just saying this is the example true plus. So this is the text actually. Okay, this is the not operation. Like I'm just calling this JavaScript. Okay. Okay. Similarly for the example three. Okay. Just save this. Okay. So I'm just making sure like it able to have this JavaScript, okay, functions, and I'm just calling that in the button click events. Okay, so let me build this. Okay, so actually we do we need to build, is that required? Obviously it does not require, right? Because it just compiles and runs at the client side with the browser. Okay, even if you don't save also, like it is going to take care of everything. See here in this button, like what should be the output? There should be the compile time error, right? So if I click on this, it is giving 10 apples. The output is like 10 apples, which is not the right output. Okay, so if I click on this button, it should say compile time error, because you are concatenating true and integer, like boolean and integer. So but still it is giving 3. This is the wrong one. Okay, so here the comparison, it should not compare with integer and a string value, but it's still it's staying true. it should return actually false, right? Or it should have some comparison error. So but that's not happening. So the basic data type supported by JavaScript is like having some issues. The first thing you have to understand. The second thing you have to understand, like it even doesn't support complex data types. Like it is very difficult for to maintain a list of array items or all the stuff, like in having complex calculations or like complex operations that happening in your page or your web page or the functionality. So that's not supported in your JavaScript. That's the main disadvantages in using it. Okay, if I hope you understand like what we are why what's the issues in JavaScript. Okay, so now let's jump into these things like understanding in much in detail, like in HTML and JavaScript disadvantages, limitations. It has only static pages. Okay, doesn't change without the server. Okay, no built-in rich UI. You can't develop rich UIs and rich data types. Okay, complex data types and all the stuff. It doesn't support using the HTML and JavaScript. And there is no security. If you write everything on the client side, like anybody can view that, since secured data, right? For example, there is an account number, like account number, password, like in your banking systems. How do I store that in the client systems? So I cannot store that in the client systems, right? So that's the security issues. Okay, so limited debugging, like you have seen, like even though it has some error, like we are unable to see what's the error here. It's not able to compile and it's not able to debug properly. Okay, so weakly data types in JavaScript can cause bugs. Like in whatever we have shown the sample, it has huge amount of bugs that can come with the JavaScript data types. Okay, but still I can say that JavaScript is popular because like whatever possible things that we can do with the client side without going to the server side, so we can use the JavaScript. Okay, so for example, like client validations. Okay, for checking the form fields and submitting to the server before going to submit your data to your form to the server. So they can consider like there is a form filling, like I need to fill all those forms. So before submitting the data to the server, I just wanted to check whether particular that field is a required field, if it is filled or not. So in the client side validations, I can use JavaScript. Okay. For example, if you're a grid, you have a grid display. Okay. I wanted to sort the data or I wanted to fill that data. I doesn't need to go to the server and do that kind of a functionality, right? I can still have this sorting and filter at the client side. Okay. So dynamic UI behavior. Okay, showed height, side animation, some Ajax calls. I can use the JavaScript. Still, I can use the JavaScript. So, okay, I can use the calling APIs like directly from the browser without reloading the page. So I doesn't need to go to the server for API calling and all the stuff. So similarly, I can work with the libraries like jQuery, Bootstrap, okay, Chart, other JavaScript frameworks also. Okay. So I hope you understand like what is the importance of having HTML and JavaScript. Okay, the client side technologies, and what is the issues, like what is the limitations and why it is still popular. Okay, okay, and like now the based on the limitations or based on the situation, like in the HTML JavaScript, so we come up with the razor pages, which is nothing but the cs.html. Okay, razor pages is the extension is like CSHTML. So CSHTML, it is like very much popular. Like it is nothing but it's a combination of razor syntax. Okay, so in the session one also we have seen, like in terms of the razor syntax, we have came across like basic razor syntax. Okay, at the rate page, right? It has the razor syntax. It also has the C# logic. So whatever the weak data types, like we are going to replace with the C# logic over here. So you have the combination of razor syntax, C# logic, and HTML and JavaScript. So that's the CS HTML beauty. Okay. So you can develop any of the applications like in the client side, server side. So in the C# logic doesn't means like it will have the all the features of C#. It can't have the interfaces, it can't have the abstract classes, inheritance, okay, solid principles and all the stuff, but it can have the basic and primitive and complex data types. Okay, if you want me to show you that, okay, I wanted to show you on a high level. So in the module one, you have done this, right? Arrays demo, data types demo. Okay, it supports all this particular explicit data types declaration, and it has the array complex data types like arrays and all this stuff. Okay, so but you can't have this what we have done in the C#, like we have done the object oriented principles in detail, and we have done with the advanced like solid principles, asynchronous programming, generics, all the stuff we have done, right? So this is not possible while we are working with Razor syntax. So C sharp logic, we can have the C sharp logic, but not complex concepts like, okay, like solid principles, okay, advanced hopes. You cannot have. So that's the main thing that you have to understand. So it has the basic in looping this array types or models. You can have basic data types and complex data types, basic data types in terms of explicit data types, declaration, and all this stuff. So I hope you understand why we have come to the server side programming. Okay, to generate the dynamic content, secure the process. Okay, business logic. So I wanted to make sure all my logic and all this particular application is secure. Okay, so I will go with the server side program. Okay, I will store the data and read the data from the database. Okay, control authentication and authorization. So for this thing, like I wanted to move to the server side programming. Okay, so how it leads to this ASP.NET Core, it combines the logic of using this Razor syntax, C sharp code logic. Okay, and it uses the HTML and JavaScript. Okay, by this time you have must understand like what are the limitations in HTML and JavaScript. So why, but still why JavaScript is still popular. Okay, why we have went into the server side programming like ASP.NET Core. Okay, and what is this basic CS HTML will it will contain. Okay, so that should be the agenda for this. If you want me to recap everything, like see, we have introduced with the HTML and JavaScript. We have seen the limitations, like what are the data types supported by JavaScript. Okay, it basically supports let, where, and constant variables only, and these variables also very loose types. It does not it is not strongly types. So I we have gone through the demo, like the limitations of these data types. Okay, and I showed you why we need to jump into this server side programming, and why how that .cshtml contains. Okay, and what it contains in the C sharp code, and what it does not contain. Okay, and we are ready head to the server side programming, right? So let's see what is this next session that we can see. So in the next session, we will jump into the server side. Okay, this is not client side, this is server side. So server-side technologies, like we will basically have this particular difference in ASP.NET versus ASP.NET MVC and ASP.NET Core. So there is this, consider this is the older technologies, and now with the ASP.NET Core, this is the latest one. Okay, consider in that way. So once you understand the difference in ASP.NET, ASP.NET MVC, and ASP.NET Core, so we can directly jump into the ASP.NET Core in detail. Okay. So next session, we'll see the server-side technologies, ASP.NET, ASP.NET MVC, and ASP.NET Core. Okay. So later we will jump into from session 3, like we will jump into the ASP.NET Core. Okay. So let's catch up in the next session. Thank you. Thanks for watching.